Okay, good afternoon, history buffs, history lovers. Welcome to a new episode of History by Bike. But for this episode, we will not be going on a biking expedition, but instead, we will be tackling about the British invasion of the Philippines, or specifically, the British occupation of Manila. So please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So stay tuned. We will be discussing about the arrival of the British. William Draper led the British occupation of the Philippines in 1762. More than 2 centuries later, traces of this historical event are still evident in the faces of people from the towns of Cainta and Taytay, whose features are more South Asian rather than Malay. Here is why. The 7 Years' War between England and France started in 1756. French colonies in North America and the West Indies were taken over by the British. The Spanish king sided with France, which was ruled by the same Bourbon family to which he belonged. War was declared between England and Spain. The acting governor and Archbishop of Manila, Manuel Antonio Rojo, realized how vulnerable the Philippines was. But perhaps taking as precedent the miracle at La Naval, he believed that another instance of divine intervention from the Virgin Mary would save the day against the Protestant infidels. William Draper, who was in the service of the British East India Company, heard about his weak link in the Spanish Empire. From Madras, India, he led an expeditionary force to capture Manila. His force consisted of European and Indian regulars, volunteers, and mercenaries. The Indians were known as Sepoys. Draper's records showed that he had 2,000 men in his force. Rojo's historian related that he had close to 7,000. The former figure was probably used to emphasize the case with which the British were able to overtake Manila. The latter, to justify why the Spanish lost so easily. The British force landed in Manila on September 23, 1762 without opposition. The invaders encamped south of Intramuros. Rojo immediately rushed to gather some 300 volunteers from the Spanish community to bolster the 500 or so regular Spanish force. But it was the native population of nearby Pampanga and Bulacan who gave the British force a lesson or two in guerrilla warfare. 1,000 Filipino fighters who had been convinced by their Spanish parish priests that the British were invading demons staged surprise attacks against the invaders' encampments outside the walled city. A commando succeeded in entering the tent of Draper but was subsequently repelled. The British subjected Manila to heavy bombardment. The forts of San Andres and San Eugenio were demolished. On October 5, Rojo flew the white flag over Fuerza Santiago. The city was given up to the victorious troops for pillage. Even churches and nunneries were not spared from plunder and rape. The bombardment and plunder were so intense that a big portion of the city was laid to waste. That portion is now the big open space that is the Rizal Park. Filipino freedom fighters against Spanish rule saw a direct or indirect ally in England during and after the war. Diego Silang led an uprising against Spain in Ilocos. So did Juan de la Cruz Palaris in Pangasinan. Sultan Azim ud-Din Alimuddin of Sulu and Sabah entered into a mutual defense pact with the British. Majority of the Chinese residents in Manila aided the British and formed military units against Spain. Meanwhile, the Sepoy members of the British forces had started settling down in the towns of Cainta and Taytay in Morong Province. The 7 Years' War ended in Europe on February 10, 1763 with the signing of a peace treaty in Paris. Manila and its environs were returned by the British to Spanish sovereignty in March 1764. The British fleet sailed back to India in April. The Philippines was never the same again after that war. Filipinos now knew that Spain was not invulnerable after all. Its rule in the Philippines would not last forever. It was inevitable that the Filipinos themselves should rule their native land. But it had to take another century or so before these ideas would be articulated in a more systematic way, first by the propagandists and later by a constitution. If the British conquest of the Philippines brought about a measure of ideological change in the Filipino, it also left some physical imprints. During their occupation of Cainta and Taytay, the Sepoy men found it pleasant living among the Filipinos. They chose to remain behind when the British fleet sailed away. They married Filipinas. Over the centuries, their children's children have retained the distinct features of their Indian ancestry. So, well, I think this will be the end of our episode for today about the arrival of the British in the Philippines and their subsequent occupation of Manila from 1762 to 1764. So, I hope you enjoyed our episode for today. So, I will be just reminding you to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. So, I guess this will be the end of our episode now for today. So, see you on the next one. Thank you very much for watching this new episode.